You know, in the series Records of Ragnarok, the trickster god that we know, right? The cunning trickster, shapeshifter. It's actually funny because his title of trickster god didn't actually come from him being able to shapeshift or, you know, him being cunning. Yes, it added to it, but it wasn't the main reason. So we find actually the main reason of him being called the trickster god is because of his love. So the origin of all the evil that he's been exuding will become because of love. So when we first see Loki in his backstory, we see that he's already a different breed. He almost looked like an emo rockster, okay? And I'm assuming it's probably because of the blood he got from the giants, okay? So the blood he got from the giants is probably, almost say, consciously encouraging his evil consciousness, okay? So the fact that he was still on equal terms with Thor and Odin, the rest of the gods wouldn't really trifle with him, right? So regardless of how the other gods thought about him, you know, that didn't really sway his actions or mood. You know, he kind of just did his own thing. Until one day he was walking through, you know, the palace of their, you know, their land, and you find, you know, the 12 Valkyrie sisters, okay? They're throwing tomatoes or apples or grapes or whatever they're throwing at each other, right? They're just having fun. They're minding their own business, all right? And, you know, actually, you know, not out of Loki's character, he's minding his own business, right? Until, you know, the oldest sister, Brunhilde, takes an entire watermelon. You know, she has to be extra because she is extra, right? She throws the watermelon at one of her sisters. One of her sisters dodges it. And then we actually see that Loki, instead of getting hit, he actually eats the watermelon in this most grotesque, demonic way, okay? All right? And every other sister is, like, terrified. They're like, oh my gosh, like, he is going to smite us. He's going to kill us. What have we done? We angered Loki. But Loki just casually eats the watermelon, you know, spits out all the seeds and everything. He does it in a very funny face. And the only sister to actually react to this in a very positive manner was Brunhilde, the oldest sister, right? Making fun of him, saying he looked like a squirrel with that face, and it's all funny, laughing, ha ha ha, right? And instead of Loki actually lashing out like we expect him to, he actually falls in love with her smile. Now, it's funny. Now, Loki is hyper focusing. He's hyper focusing on her smile. Like, he fell in love with her smile. It's not very specific. He fell in love with her, but he fell in love with the emotion, the smile, the beauty of that, right? So then he gets a little embarrassed. He runs off, and then ever since that moment, that smile changed the entire way Loki viewed his life. So ever since then, he decided to mold his entire life based on being a trickster, based on doing pranks, based on trying to make her smile for him. Okay, so now Loki decided to go on and torment every god he sees. So in accordance to his beliefs, in accordance to what he wants Brunhilde to laugh. So he'll do anything for that, right? So we see him even messing with our little boy Ares, getting him a little haircut, getting him a little bald, okay? Ares in any timeline is the joke. That is what I find funny. But besides that point, we see that he continues his jokes, he continues his tricks. And it's all just to get that smile from Brunhilde. He even went as far as to stealing his brother's hammer, Thor, Mjolnir, okay? He stole Mjolnir, and obviously Thor is pissed off. They barely escape, and he gets that smile once more from Brunhilde, okay? He you know, he understands, but right when he wants to admit his love and confess his love for her, he finds that, you know, she's in love with someone else, a guy named Siegfried, a half-breed, right? He'd never seen her make the facial expression she made with him. This almost peace, this almost what do you call it, consolement. She has this face she's never made with him before, and he is absolutely livid. He can't accept another man taking his love, taking his reason, taking his newfound happiness, right? So what does Loki do? Does Loki move on? Does Loki, you know, handle it like an adult? Does he process his feelings? No. You see, now Loki, this is the first time Loki's ever really felt anything. So the first time we felt anything, we were kids. But in Loki's emotional, state, he's almost like a kid. He doesn't know how to regulate his emotions. So he just does what he always does: kill, murder, and frame, right? So he ends up killing his uncle's favorite pet dragon, okay, posing as Siegfried to then blame him for this god-awful crime in hopes of getting Brynhilde to like him. Now let's think about that for a second. Why would I cause the love of my life, her love, to be in prison, to be suffering forever, and then be shocked when she isn't happy, right? That just tells you the emotional immaturity that Loki's going through right now. This is his first time ever feeling anything positive, and then he took it and ran with it, right? So pretty much what goes on from this is that, yes, Brynhilde and Siegfried wants to get married, and they figure out that, Odin wants us to get married, so Odin invites them to the chapel or whatever, right? And then there they were ambushed, and then that was when he was confronted with his supposedly killing, but they don't know that was Loki. And obviously Loki's there front and center, and obviously Siegfried tries to plead his case, but obviously there's nothing that he can really prove because eyewitnesses saw him actually kill the dragon. But it's funny enough that no one really suspects that it could be Loki besides Brynhilde suddenly. Well, like subtly. She subtly thinks that it could be Loki. We see a panel of her actually looking at him while he has a little grin, but nothing was concrete. But we see that Odin, he doesn't condemn Siegfried to eternity in Tartarus, right? He doesn't do it because of that crime. He does it because he has his own ulterior motives. We see him say, what a chance of him like finding out that Siegfried was a vessel for something that he wanted, his own selfish wants that we're figuring out to this day, right? So that was extra motivation to throw him and lock him up. So then we see that Loki's like, okay, all right, Siegfried got eternal damnation. Sounds all right to me. All right, I can go back to my life and keep Brynhilde happy. And then we see that Brynhilde is obviously very, very sad, very, very devastated because she lost the love of her life. But, Loki being emotionally immature at this time, he can't even grasp that concept. But what we do see is that Brynhilde gives Loki the most heinous, disgusting, contempted look that a woman could ever give a man. And if a woman ever looks at you like this, guys, I need you to run. I need you to run. I need you to run. I need you to RUN, okay? Because that is not a safe place to be. But Loki, of course he's not going to give up on his first love. She hates him, and yes, she is very, very sad, but he got to keep trying, right? That's all he knows now. So he journal in his journal every day exactly how he is trying to make her happy, and he's doing all the old things he's doing new things, but nothing is working until he sees her at the very, very beginning when she implemented Ragnorak to try to save humanity, all for the hopes that she can save her loved one. He sees her for the first time in a long time, and he still is in love with her. And we see that Loki, throughout the series of us reading, we see in the background, he was constantly watching her, constantly around her, right? And then we see him having an encounter with Hercules, right? So this is around round 5, right? Yeah, round 4, right? Yeah, round 4. When she went to recruit Hercules to fight Jack the Ripper. We see that he had a conversation with Hercules, and, he's trying to contradict Hercules. He's trying to say that, oh, you think you're so good, right? We know, right? But then Hercules actually calls out Loki and saying, like, dude, you are miserable. You do not look happy at all. And then Loki is saying, listen, man, I'm only miserable because Brynhilde is not smiling. So what is the conclusion that Loki comes to that Brynhilde, what can he solve? What can he do to make Brynhilde happy again? Well, his only logical conclusion is, I gotta kill all humans. I just gotta kill them all. Because that's the only logical conclusion that I could have in killing them all. So then we see him back in the present when he's fighting, right? and fighting the White Death, and we see him actually morph into a rabbit that's behind him to try to kill. But the whole point of this is really give more context to why Loki is the way he is, why he loves Brynhilde, and how it all started. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Peace.
Penny X.